Hi, everybody, and welcome to a very exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. I'm always delighted when I have someone crafting from the world of science fiction come and talk to me for a little while. And today that happens to be author David Brin. Mr. Brin, may I call you Mr. Brin, David, Mr.
Uh,
what
Doc,
Doc?
PhD, but to be honest, David will do fine.
All right, all right. Now, I imagine you have a PhD in the sciences. I would
Yeah,
imagine.
astrophysics from UCSD. I did my undergraduate at Caltech, and I'm still engaged in astrophysics, working with NASA's Innovative and Advanced Concepts program as one of their external counselors. But I tried to escape into science, but I came from a family of writers, and I always expected that writing would be my artistic sideline. All the scientists I've known had artistic sidelines.
Mhm.
Murray Gell-Mann with history, and Feynman with bongos and painting, and Einstein with his violin. I can't claim to be at that level, but I thought that writing would be my sideline, my artistic sideline. But civilization soon made it very clear that I was a pretty good scientist, but they really wanted my novels.
Yes, yeah,
So that the tail wagged the dog, and may that happen to all of you.
yeah. And I tend to follow what civilization responds to, I suppose.
Who am I to argue with civilization?
Right, right.
All right.
Uh, I have a PhD. It's in literacy studies. So we are a paradox. A paradox.
A paradox, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Indeed. Well, we try for the handsomeness, but
Hey,
that's a bridge too far for the two of us. But we try.
yes, yeah. One can reach and one can hope. So I think the first book that I found of yours at some point was Startide Rising. Um, Lovely commentary, and you do, in the world of sciences, one of the things that I would want listeners to know is that to really truly be science fiction, you really need that level of scientific knowledge to bring in to truly represent the genre. And that's something that obviously you do well from your background and experiences. And then there's also the sort of the action-packed side of it that keeps the pages moving at the same time.
Well, being able to tell an action-packed, fun, diverting story is, of course, number one. And I'll put into the chat a link to my article for advice for rising or new or rising writers,
Hmm.
because I think it's terribly important to pass on, just a second here, to
For sure.
pass on, to pay it forward. People were kind to me when I was a young whippersnapper. I think it's terribly important to pay it forward. So I offer advice and mentorship to a lot of young writers. It takes up a lot of my time. Several of them are writing for one of my YA or young adult science fiction series.
Mhm.
One of them has six or seven versions already, I mean, novels already published, and more to come. And I'll put the URL for that in the chat as well. The It's designed to be fairly short novels, um, set in a future that, unlike most YA uh, literature, is especially science fiction, is not a dystopia.
Right.
Because these simple, cheap apocalypse utopias in which you have poison dripping El Presidentes fought by an arrow girl and her comrades, that almost writes itself.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it spreads among young people a notion that civilization can't move ahead.
Right.
You can't be part of a civilization and move it forward. All you can do is oppose it. Well, that's romantic. Sure, sure. That's a typical teenage fantasy, oppose
Mhm.
everything. But to be honest, do you want that? Do you want that for your grandchildren? In the Out of Time series, I posit a future, uh, 250 years from now, in which today's young people have saved the world from us boomers, uh,
Love it.
and from the mistakes we've made. And it's a beautiful utopian future, but there's a crisis. And you can get just as much action and adventure in a utopia that's under crisis
Mhm.
as you can from a horrible, simplistic dystopia. And the proof of that is Star Trek versus
Oh yeah.
Star Wars. Star Trek, they take a wonderful future and throw it into danger again and again and again so the characters have adventure.
Mhm. Mhm.
But they're fighting for something.
Yeah.
In Star Wars, it's just despair. Any time they succeed against the Empire or the First Order or whatever the worst thing, which is Yoda and the Jedi, um, every time they succeed against any of those horrible caricatures, it doesn't do a darn bit of good. Things get worse, and then they get worse, and then they get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Anyway, so that's the whole notion behind how you do need to get things rolling along
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
characters who the reader can identify with. And this is what I had in common with Kevin Costner when he made a movie of my novel, my most popular novel,
Mhm.
The Postman. It's in 25 languages. I've been told by people from Kazakhstan that it is an icon for the freedom movement all across the steppes of Central Asia.
Oh
What?
wow.
Good luck. Glad to be of help.
Right.
Uh,
You never know what you're
the
putting out there, right? And
Yeah,
how it will be
yeah, you
taken
never
up.
know what's going to come back when you toss bottles into the great ocean filled with novels that people like. Um, but in the Postman movie, um, I think the first half of the movie is absolutely terrific. The whole movie is musically and visually absolutely stunning, gorgeous. I think it's one of the 12 most beautiful movies ever shot. Costner's a brilliant cinematographer.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and it's morally faithful to the heart message of my book. Now, in this book, there is a dystopia. There is an apocalypse. Everybody's got to write a post-apocalypse novel. But in my case, I push the notion that the hero can matter, but the hero's principal job is to remind the survivors that they had once been magic beings, powerful uber beings called citizens,
Mhm.
and that
Mhm.
together they are the ones who can rebuild civilization. And Costner captured that heart essence of my book perfectly. Unfortunately, the last third was incoherent,
Mhm.
uncoordinated, and he brought out the movie the same weekend as Titanic.
Uh, yeah.
So there were things about it that were, shall we say, less competently done than other things. So get on with your questions.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
have we talked
Absolutely.
about science in science, weaving science into creative worlds of fiction? That
I
was one of the
mentioned that
questions.
briefly, but yeah. So anything that you would want to add about the importance of that for writers that really want to tackle science
Well,
fiction?
look, only 10% of or so of science fiction authors are scientifically trained as I am. Um, and I do weave science into a lot of my works, certainly not all of them. Some of them are fantastic or fantasies or attempts at being poetical.
Hmm.
Um, and some are critical of science. But some of the best science fiction, hard science fiction with science in it, is written today by former English majors.
Ah,
Kim Stanley Robinson is getting huge attention all over the world for his ecological novel, The Ministry for the Future. In fact, the UN is creating a new agency with that name. Nancy Kress, the late Greg Bear, Sheila Finch, Sue Burke. These are all former English majors who write science-filled science fiction. And the reason they're able to do it is that they have figured out how to ask questions of scientists over
mhm.
pizza and beer.
Love
They
it.
get
Love it.
interested in something they've read about in the popular science press. They find somebody at a nearby university who knows about that and take them out for pizza and beer. And ask questions and do you mean this? Do you mean this? Until their expert knowledge can be re-expressed in words. And sometimes the scientist pays for the pizza and beer.
What
So
a lovely way to do research.
the cheapest consulting fee you could possibly ever pay, and the result is that sometimes they name a character in the book after the scientist or somebody. It's called a Tuckerization. And I've done that for a lot of people.
I love it.
But in any event, that's one way of bringing science into your science fiction, is just be curious. And then realize that the nearby university, if you knock on a door and ask questions, guess what? The cops won't come. The worst thing that can happen is that the person inside the door will say, "Go away, I'm busy now."
Mhm, mhm. Right, right.
If you realize that you should be fearless about asking questions, you can become a person who asks questions in a society that's filled with answers. And then the most important thing, more questions.
Mhm. The
Now, for your
conversation.
students, I have a piece of advice that I've given over and over again at commencement speeches and all of that for the last 30 years. It's about something that I did when I was a freshman, sophomore, undergraduate at Caltech. And that is, once a month, pick a random door on campus.
Mhm.
Pick a building at random, pick a floor at random, pick a door at random. Knock on that door and say, "Excuse me, what do you do here?" If it winds up being the utilities department, you'll learn a lot about about how to maintain buildings.
True
If
enough.
it turns out to be the English department, you'll learn a lot about this or that in literature. If it turns out to be a scientist, 9 times out of 10, they'll drop everything to take you on a tour of something you never imagined was even conceivable before.
That's wonderful. That is
And
wonderful.
what will happen is, if you spend 4 years at the university, walking between these buildings that you treat like cliffs in a canyon,
Mhm,
and it
mhm,
never
mhm.
occurs to you to go into those buildings and ask questions. You just go from your dorm cave to your class cave to the commons where you eat stuff that you never hunted or gathered, uh, to the parking lot. You will have betrayed the taxpayers, you will have betrayed your parents, and you will have betrayed yourself. But if you do what old Brin recommended, besides which, it's actually a pretty good date.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, I'm going to go crawl some halls and question people. Want to come?
Mhm, mhm.
It certainly shows what type of person you are. And
This
if
is
they say
true.
yes, you found out something about them.
They're date worthy.
That's right. But in any event, if you do this, well, this is how I got 3 different summer jobs,
Um,
and you will double your education. So that's my little rant for your students about what you do when you go to college, and it extends to life.
Hmm.
You can ask questions. What's the worst that can happen? They're going to say, go away.
And that's okay too.
That's
That's
okay
okay.
too. They're busy people.
So what are the questions that drive your work and that you're currently thinking about in the world?
Oh, well, I've been doing a lot of thinking and writing about AI, artificial intelligence. It's one of several
Mm-hmm.
topics that I've been transfixed by since I was in my 20s, since I started writing science fiction, since I was an undergraduate. One of them is the Fermi paradox, and that is why we don't see any obvious signs of alien life in the cosmos. I've been involved in SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, for 30 years, more than 30 years. I've been an astrophysicist. I've been involved with NASA. I'm a science fiction author who writes about alien contact all the time. And I
Mm-hmm.
have to tell you that the worst thing about this whole UFO fetishism is how execrably boring and dull all the notions about UFOs are.
Mm-hmm.
It's just dull. It's the
Yeah.
same darn stuff over and over again, completely immune to the simple disproof of the fact that this doesn't make any sense. There are much, much more interesting aspects to the universe than this notion that we're getting teased and getting probed by silver colored SOBs from space.
As though they wouldn't already know what they want to know anyway, if
It's
they were a
it's
humanoid to
it's
begin with.
just it's just dumb. I mean, look, we have a million times as many active cameras on planet Earth as we did in the 50s, when the images of these so-called spacecraft were much better. All that's happened when we multiply by a millionfold the number of active cameras on Earth is that they've gotten blurrier. I'm sorry.
No, no, it's fine. It's fine.
I have an open mind, sometimes too open. Things leak out, but there's just a lot more interesting things going on.
True, very true.
All right, so another question.
Yes, yeah,
Oh, by the way,
and
what's the name of your school?
so I teach at Wilkes Central High School.
Wilkes Central.
Hmm.
All right.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So what have we not talked about? I know that we want to mention Out of Time again, uh, because young adult literature is such a powerful thing.
Well,
Process.
I have a second young adult series. It doesn't have as many novels because I'm writing them. And it's called the High Horizon series. And the premise is very simple. Aliens kidnap an American high school and live to regret it.
You are. There
So
you
I
are.
will put that in the chat as well for you to be able to give to folks. And
I will link them out.
all right, well, that sounds good to me.
Most likely, also share with my students that I meet next year as well.
And their
Aliens
critiques,
kidnap.
by the way, they can feed you critiques, and if you pass them along to me,
Hmm.
like for instance, high school students today wouldn't talk like that. I get that a lot. But I
Yeah.
run all of my books past pre-readers. And for
Cool.
these books, I try to run them past high school classes of young people. Because the thing that's hardest often for young people to learn is to get a thick skin about criticism.
Hmm.
When you think about it, getting feedback from other people, even enemies, can be very helpful. There's only one way to get through your own delusions, and that is for other people to criticize your mistakes.
Hmm.
When you think about it, that's how you get better at something. I mean, if you're learning how to be a silversmith under Paul Revere, and Paul Revere says, no, don't hit the hammer quite so hard, go a slightly different angle, you're going to become a better silversmith. You weren't doing it right. Now you'll get a little closer to doing it right. The same is true of almost everything in life. And yet, deep inside, our guts hurt when we're criticized. This is
Mm.
a huge human flaw.
The
It
desire
means
to
that we
please.
try to avoid
Mm.
the very thing that can make us better. And this explains human history, because most of human history, 99% of human history, Africa, Asia, Europe, the Americas, was dominated by kings. Kings and lords, it was called feudalism. And boy, did those bastards suppress criticism. If you started criticizing them, they killed you. And you know what? That explains why they made so many mistakes, why they never got a civilization that got science and burst out the way ours has.
Mm-hmm.
99% of human history, criticism was rejected, was repressed. We created a society in which you are free to criticize each other and even criticize the powers at the top. That is the key. So you as a person, you as an individual, if you develop an appetite for helpful criticism, and even an appetite to study the hateful criticism, because nobody's going to look for your errors more deeply than two types of people. One is a spouse. Get married, you'll get a fair amount of the criticism you need. It's ideally helpful. But the other person who's going to be criticizing you, looking for your errors and spotting them, is your enemy. And if you take notes when your enemy is criticizing you, that's interesting. Okay, these three are bull. You're an idiot. But these two, gosh, I think you've nailed one of my problems. Thanks. Now you're going to make me, now thanks to you, I'm going to be even better and better able to defeat you. Thanks.
Love it. Yeah.
If you take that attitude towards your enemies, nothing is going to upset them more than the knowledge that you weren't hurt, but that instead they helped you to get better. Think about it.
True.
All right, that's one of my lectures to young people.
Love it.
All right.
Love it.
Have
Well,
a thick skin. Seek criticism. You'll get better.
as we're coming to our last couple of minutes, any final words of parting to share about crafting with humor, which you so naturally seem to do just in conversation, but that's also part of your work that I enjoy with Ancient Ones. So we can go there, or any final words that you'd like to make sure to share.
So you've seen my my comedy, The Ancient Ones.
I absolutely have.
And I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes.
Well, my sci-fi comedy is very hard, and it's very hard to get it so that it so that it clicks with a publisher. Publishers are dour people, so I wound up having to publish The Ancient Ones myself. I think it's hilarious, but then again, tastes in humor vary. So I hope your class enjoys it.
Yes. Yeah.
Again, I'm willing to get feedback on what was funny and what wasn't, and I wish all of your bright and lucky students much success. I teased my son, who's a little older than your students. I said to him the other night that if humanity does discover much extended lifespan or even immortality, it won't be on time for me. And if it's on time for you, I was talking to my son, if it's on time for you and you get it, I will be so pissed. But if it comes on time for your kids, I can live with that. And my son looked at me with a very rare look of respect, and he said, "That was well said." And I said, "The old man still got it."
That's right. That's right.
So
The wit
may
is
the
alive.
proto-immortals in your high school class, or the parents of immortals more likely, May they live long and prosper.
Love it. Love it. And oh, I didn't do it right. There we go. And you as well. You as well.
All right.
And thank you so much. Yeah, lovely conversation, and may the conversation continue. And now I want to work in something like Go Boldly or something like that.
I'm sorry.
Now I want to work in something like Go Boldly.
Oh, go
Uh,
boldly. Yes,
yes.
yes. Well, and my latest nonfiction book, Vivid Tomorrows, Science Fiction in Hollywood, makes the argument that science fiction cinema and movies and TV inspired by novels is the reason we're still around.
Mm,
The
mhm,
warnings and the not only just the warnings, though they were important, but also the sense of hope that we
mm,
got from good cinematic science fiction like Star Trek.
yeah.
So anyway, I'll put the link to Vivid Tomorrows in the chat, and I will wish you all fond farewell.
Thank you so much, and wishing you as well. And I'll share those links. And such a joy to talk with you.